Hi everybody, this is a video about humanism. I'm trying to sort of explain a bit about what it is, because I don't want yet another word to become bastardised. That seems to be what's starting to happen at the moment. Humanism, if you look at pretty much any dictionary, any definition, anywhere, any encyclopedia, you're going to get something along the lines of humanism means concern. It's a moral philosophy where you have concern for human needs, rights and welfare, basically. This means you care about human beings, which is pretty straightforward to understand, I think. That's what it means. There are certain atheists who follow the moral philosophy of humanism. They tend to agree that one of the best ways to live our lives is by concerning ourselves with the rights, the needs and the welfare of other humans. And because those people are atheists, we call them secular humanists, because their humanism is not tethered to any kind of religious beliefs. They aren't showing concern for the rights, needs and welfare of human beings because of any religious instructions, not because it says so in any religious scripture, but simply because it is what they see as being right. Which, as far as I'm aware, has to do with us being social animals. If we don't care about each other, we wouldn't have survived as a social species very well. We wouldn't have survived the natural selection process very well. So that would explain why we do that. It's not we're not doing it because we're told to. It's because it's what we are evolutionarily geared toward doing. There is a trend of late where people are trying to use the word humanism as a term to apply to themselves instead of the word feminism. People don't want to put this term feminism on themselves. I mean, feminism and humanism are not mutually exclusive positions. If anything, I mean, if you're concerned with the welfare of human beings and the rights and the needs of human beings, by default you are concerned with the rights, needs and welfare of women, because as far as I'm aware, women are human beings. So I'm told anyway by various biologists. So humanism and feminism aren't mutually exclusive. You don't have to identify as one or the other. I see them as very compatible philosophies. And let's bear in mind, feminism, to be clear, is a belief that women should have equal rights to men. Yeah, it isn't a belief that they should be superior to men. Although plenty of anti-feminists do try and straw man the position like that. Humanism, recently, I mean, Thunderfoot has done another video, yet another fucking video on the subject of feminism and anti-feminism, where he says that, he points out that Madonna has said she's not a feminist, she's a humanist. I don't know why Thunderfoot thinks Madonna's opinion is of any particular significance here. I'm not saying it's of no significance, she is a human being who lives on this planet, but why he thinks that lends particularly huge weight to his argument. Now, with there's a number of words Thunderfoot doesn't understand the meaning of, or has demonstrated he has no understanding of the meaning of. One of those is free thought. He seems to equate free thought to free speech. He seems to think free thought means thinking whatever the hell you like. I can understand why someone might think that's what free thought means, but it's not. Free thought means that you base your conclusions, your beliefs on evidence, reason and logic, things like that, not on dogma, authority or tradition and things like that. So essentially that's the principles of free thought. It obviously ties into things like atheism, but it shouldn't be used as a synonym for it. And it really doesn't have anything to do with free speech. I mean, I support free speech, I also support free thought, but you know, the two things are two separate things. The other word Thunderfoot constantly uses is rationalist. I'm guilty of this myself. I usually use the word rationalist, but having spoken to people who know a bit more about philosophy than I do, rationalist doesn't actually mean what a lot of atheists seem to think it means. It doesn't just mean someone who's rational. It's actually a philosophical position whereby you try and prove things using only reason, not evidence. Using evidence makes you an empiricist. So I'm told. Again, obviously, if you talk to someone who actually knows a bit more about philosophy, I'm sure they'll explain that a lot better than I have. And so I try not to use the word rationalist anymore. It's, you know, it's confusing, this idea of rationalism with rationality, which is confusing. But I think feminism and humanism seem to be the next words that Thunderfoot doesn't understand the meaning of. Either that or he's deliberately misconstruing them for his own personal reasons. And of course, I mean, it's great to hear people finally applying the term humanism to themselves. One of the reasons a lot of atheists on the internet won't apply the term humanism to themselves, one would be that they don't actually know that it exists or know what it means. The other is it would restrict their behaviour in many ways. To be a humanist, you can't just go around attacking and being needlessly rude to religious people all the time. Now, I know I'm guilty of, being quite argumentative with the religious, but I do hold myself to certain standards whereby I try to attack the belief, not the believer, and so on, and all this sort of, all these cliches that I could spew out. And I mean, I've seen some horrible posts from atheists in the past saying that religious people should be wiped from the face of the planet and things like that, all sorts of horrible things like that. I'm not saying that this is the majority of atheists, but obviously those atheists are not humanists. They don't fit into that bracket. They can't be described as such. And I think that's why it's taken a while for this term to catch on with internet atheism, because the internet is a place that it tends to attract people who like arguing and slapping at each other and poning each other, and cooperation and and getting along isn't all that cool on the internet, I don't think. So although humanism as a philosophy, certainly secular humanism, has been around for well over 100 years, the internet is only really just catching up with it. But I really don't want people just slapping this term humanist on themselves as some sort of alternative to feminism, because that is not what it means. And I don't want yet another word to become bastardised. I don't have to spend another million years trying to explain the meaning of a word to people, or trying to set right a misconception of the meaning of a word. The other thing is getting back to this point that Thunderfoot's making, where he says, well, Madonna says she's not a feminist, she's a humanist. Let's look at someone like Carl Sagan. Now, he is often cited by atheists, he's often claimed by atheists, he is described as a famous atheist. However, he is on record as having said he's not an atheist. He did not embrace the term atheist, not at any point. Right up until his death, he absolutely denied the term atheist, because he believed an atheist was someone who knew for certain that there was no God, which of course is a common misconception of the term atheist. Atheist just means someone who doesn't believe in God. The level of certainty they have of that belief is immaterial. The fact is they don't believe. So he was confusing atheism with Gnostic atheism, which is the actual claim that there's no God. And this is the odd thing. I mean, people like, as far as I'm aware, Thunderfoot, he likes Carl Sagan. As far as I'm aware, I don't think he's ever disowned Sagan. So he should understand, as well as anyone else should, that because someone doesn't apply a term to themselves doesn't mean that term doesn't apply to them. Just because someone refuses a label doesn't mean that label doesn't actually accurately apply to themselves. I think a lot of people who refuse these labels to apply to themselves feel like these labels are a threat to their individuality in some way. They hate the idea that they can be put into a box. It's like, this box, this category is where you belong. They like to think their beliefs and their views are so radical and so individualistic that they couldn't possibly just be categorisable. They couldn't possibly be a label that applies to it. But when you ask a lot of these people, well, what do you believe? What do you think? You think, yeah, this label applies to you quite accurately, I'm afraid. It doesn't mean other labels can't apply to you. It doesn't mean that you have to, that you have a huge amount in common with everyone else who fits into that particular box. But, a lot of the time, the label atheist applied to Carl Sagan. Yeah, it applied to him. He just didn't understand what the term meant. He had he'd fallen prey to a common misconception, and he was a very intelligent guy, but even very intelligent people can fall prey to these things. In fact, I think Carl Sagan actually said in one episode of Cosmos, he said something like, intelligence is no guarantee against being dead wrong. And it's perhaps ironic that sort of applies to him in this situation. I don't really know anything about Madonna's views of the world, her political views, but let's assume she believes, for a minute, that women should have equal rights to men. Well, then she is a feminist, whether or not she applies the term to herself. That's the way it goes, I'm afraid. So yeah, if anyone's got any thoughts on that, please let me know in the comments. Take care, goodbye.